June 6, 1944, 0500 hours near Sainte-Mère-Église, France. The morning mist clung to the Norman countryside like a shroud, and 18-year-old Private Tommy Rodriguez pressed his sweaty palms against the cold metal of his 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun, watching the eastern horizon for the first signs of the largest airborne operation in military history. He believed this would be just another routine air defense assignment, protecting the landing zones from German air attacks. What he couldn't possibly know was that his trembling hands would soon make a mistake that would transform the entire tactical situation for thousands of Allied paratroopers and fundamentally alter the course of one of the most critical battles of the conflict. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the next few hours, Tommy's nervous misfire would accidentally reveal the location of a hidden German artillery position that had been decimating Allied forces, ultimately saving hundreds of lives and proving that sometimes the most significant victories come from the most unexpected failures. Tommy Rodriguez had enlisted 3 months after his 18th birthday, driven by the same patriotic fervor that swept through his neighborhood in East Los Angeles after Pearl Harbor. His mother, Maria, had packed his bags with trembling hands, tucking a small wooden cross between his uniforms. His father, Carlos, a veteran of the Great War, had simply shaken his hand and said, "Come home with honor, mijo." Now, crouched behind his gun emplacement in the pre-dawn darkness of occupied France, Tommy felt the weight of those words more than ever. The Allied planners had positioned Tommy's battery on a slight rise, overlooking the designated drop zones for the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. His unit, Battery C of the 321st Anti-Aircraft Battalion, consisted of 12 men operating 4 Bofors guns, each capable of firing 120 rounds per minute up to an effective ceiling of 12,000 feet. The battery commander, Captain James Morrison, a stern regular Army officer from Ohio, had drilled them relentlessly on aircraft recognition and firing procedures. Beside Tommy, Sergeant Frank Kowalski adjusted the rangefinder for the 100th time that morning. At 24, Kowalski was an old hand who had already seen action in North Africa and Sicily. His weathered face bore a small scar from shrapnel at Anzio, and his steady demeanor provided comfort to the younger soldiers. "Remember, Rodriguez," Kowalski whispered, "identify your target before you fire. We've got our own birds coming in heavy today." The third member of their gun crew, Corporal Pete Sullivan from Boston, checked the ammunition feed mechanism with practiced efficiency. Sullivan had joined the Army straight from the Charlestown Navy Yard, where he had learned mechanical precision from his father. His technical expertise made him invaluable for maintaining the complex firing mechanisms of their Swedish-designed weapon system. As dawn approached, the sound of aircraft engines began to fill the air. The first wave consisted of 822 C-47 transport aircraft, each carrying 15 to 18 paratroopers of the crack airborne divisions. Tommy's heart raced as he watched the formations approach, their engines creating a thunderous symphony that seemed to shake the very earth beneath his feet. The German defensive positions in this sector were under the command of Oberst Heinrich Müller, a methodical officer who had spent months preparing for exactly this type of assault. Müller's 7th Army units had constructed an intricate network of defensive positions, including several carefully concealed artillery emplacements designed to devastate any airborne landing attempt. His most prized asset was a battery of 4 105mm howitzers positioned in a camouflaged bunker complex approximately 800 meters northeast of Tommy's position. Mahler had positioned his artillery with characteristic German precision. The guns were housed in reinforced concrete casements covered with netting and artificial vegetation that made them virtually invisible from aerial reconnaissance. The battery was served by 36 experienced artillerymen under the command of Hauptmann Klaus Richter, a veteran of the Eastern Front who understood the devastating effectiveness of well-timed artillery strikes against concentrated infantry formations. At 06:15 hours, the first German response began. Oberst Müller had anticipated the Allied airborne assault and positioned his units to create overlapping fields of fire across the primary drop zones. His artillery opened up with methodical precision, sending high-explosive shells into the areas where American paratroopers were descending under their silk canopies. The morning air filled with the distinctive whistle of incoming artillery rounds and the sharp crack of explosions. Tommy watched in horror as several transport aircraft began taking hits from German flak positions. One C-47, its port engine trailing smoke, passed directly overhead at an altitude of less than 1,000 feet. Through his binoculars, Tommy could see individual paratroopers jumping from the damaged aircraft, their parachutes blossoming against the grey morning sky. "Contact! Enemy aircraft! Bearing 270 degrees!" Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the field telephone. Tommy swung his gun barrel toward the indicated direction, his hands slick with nervous perspiration. Through the gun sight, he could see what appeared to be a German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter, approaching at high speed, apparently attempting to strafe the vulnerable paratroopers during their descent. Sergeant Kowalski called out the range estimates, while Corporal Sullivan ensured the ammunition feed was functioning properly. 800 meters and closing, Kowalski announced. Elevation angle 15 degrees. Lead the target, Rodriguez. Remember your training. Tommy's finger found the trigger as he tracked the approaching aircraft. His breathing became rapid and shallow, and he could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. This would be his first shot fired in anger, his first real test as a soldier. The aircraft grew larger in his sight picture, and he could make out the distinctive gull-wing configuration that confirmed it as a German fighter. The moment came suddenly. Tommy squeezed the trigger, feeling the familiar recoil of the Bofors gun as it sent its first 40mm high-explosive round toward the target. But in his nervousness, his tracking had been erratic, and the shot went wide by nearly 200 meters. The shell, instead of intercepting the German aircraft, arced high over the intended target and continued on a ballistic trajectory toward the northeast. "Damn it, Rodriguez!" Sergeant Kowalski shouted over the noise of continuing fire from adjacent gun positions. "You're shooting at clouds! Track your target properly!" Tommy quickly adjusted his aim and fired again, this time connecting with the German fighter, which immediately began trailing smoke and turned away from the battlefield. But Tommy's errant first shot had already begun its unintended journey. The 40mm high-explosive round, traveling at a muzzle velocity of 2,870 feet per second, followed a parabolic path that would bring it down in the heavily wooded area where Oberst Müller had so carefully concealed his artillery battery. Hauptmann Klaus Richter was coordinating his battery's fire mission when Tommy's wayward shell impacted directly on the camouflage netting covering his primary gun emplacement. The explosion, while relatively small compared to the rounds his own artillery was firing, nevertheless tore away a substantial section of the carefully constructed concealment. Suddenly, the concrete walls of the German position were visible from the air, marked clearly by the distinctive pattern of fresh earth and exposed concrete. Major William Patterson, piloting a P-47 Thunderbolt on a close air support mission, immediately noticed the newly revealed position. Patterson, a former airline pilot from Detroit with over 300 combat hours, recognized the tactical significance immediately. "Eagle Base, this is Thunder 7. He radioed to the Tactical Air Control Center. "I have visual on concealed enemy artillery position. Grid reference 347219. Requesting immediate strike authorization." The response came quickly. "Thunder 7, you are cleared hot. Neutralize that battery immediately." Patterson rolled his Thunderbolt into a steep diving attack, his 850 caliber machine guns and two 500-pound bombs aimed directly at the exposed German position. Hauptmann Richter realized the catastrophic nature of his situation immediately. Years of careful preparation and concealment had been undone in an instant by a single lucky shot. He began shouting orders for his men to abandon the position, but it was too late. Patterson's attack struck with devastating accuracy, effectively neutralizing the battery that had been causing significant casualties among the scattered paratroopers. The immediate tactical impact was enormous. Second Lieutenant Robert Chen of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment had landed nearly a mile from his designated drop zone, along with 37 men from his platoon. They had been pinned down by accurate artillery fire from Richter's hidden battery for over 2 hours, unable to advance toward their objective or effectively call for support due to damaged radio equipment. Chen, the son of Chinese immigrants who had grown up in San Francisco's Chinatown, had graduated from officer candidate school just 6 months earlier. His tactical training emphasized aggressive action and adaptability, but the precise artillery fire had made any movement extremely dangerous. 3 of his men had already been wounded by shell fragments, and their medical supplies were limited. "Lieutenant," Sergeant First Class Mike O'Brien called out from behind a stone wall that provided minimal cover. "That artillery battery just went quiet. Whatever happened over there, it sounds like somebody got lucky." O'Brien, a veteran of the Pacific Theater who had transferred to European operations, possessed an intuitive understanding of battlefield dynamics that proved invaluable to inexperienced officers like Chen. With the German artillery neutralized, Chen's platoon could finally advance toward their assigned objective, securing a crossroads that was vital for linking up scattered airborne units. The tactical situation had changed completely, and Chen seized the opportunity to demonstrate the aggressive leadership that characterized the elite airborne units. Private Tommy Rodriguez remained unaware of the far-reaching consequences of his nervous misfire. His attention was focused entirely on his immediate responsibilities as the air battle continued to rage overhead. German fighters continued to harass the transport formations, and his gun crew maintained a steady rate of fire against the attacking aircraft. "Good shooting now, Rodriguez," Sergeant Kowalski encouraged, as Tommy successfully engaged his 3rd target of the morning. "You've got the rhythm. Keep tracking smoothly and lead your targets properly." The confidence building from successful engagements helped steady Tommy's nerves, and his performance improved dramatically as the morning progressed. Corporal Sullivan noticed that their ammunition expenditure was well within acceptable limits, despite the intense action. "We've fired 240 rounds so far," he reported to Sergeant Kowalski. "Still have plenty for sustained operations." The logistical precision that characterized American military operations was evident even at the individual gun crew level. Captain Morrison moved between the gun positions, coordinating defensive fire and maintaining communication with higher headquarters. His tactical experience was crucial for integrating the battery's defensive efforts with the broader airborne operation. "Excellent work, men," he called out during a brief lull in the air attacks. "Intelligence reports indicate we've significantly degraded German air response capability." What Captain Morrison could not yet know was that Tommy's accidental discovery of the German artillery position had already been reported through multiple channels and was being analyzed by intelligence specialists at the division level. The broader tactical implications were becoming clear to senior commanders who understood how one concealed battery could influence an entire sector's defensive operations. Colonel James Mitchell, commander of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, received the intelligence report about the neutralized artillery battery while coordinating the scattered elements of his regiment from a temporary command post established in an abandoned farmhouse. Mitchell, a West Point graduate with extensive tactical training, immediately recognized how the elimination of that single battery would affect his regiment's ability to consolidate and advance toward their objectives. "Gentlemen," Mitchell addressed his staff officers, "this changes our entire timeline. With that artillery threat eliminated, we can advance Company B and Company C simultaneously toward the causeway objectives. Lieutenant Chen's platoon has already reported successful movement, and I expect similar results across the sector." The ripple effects continued to expand throughout the morning. Master Sergeant Robert Washington, a veteran non-commissioned officer coordinating supply drops for the scattered airborne units, found that his resupply operations were proceeding much more smoothly without the constant threat of accurate artillery fire. Washington, who had earned his stripes during the Great Depression by maintaining discipline and efficiency in civilian conservation corps projects, brought the same methodical approach to combat logistics. "Radio traffic indicates significant improvement in tactical situation," Washington reported to his commanding officer. "Casualty rates have dropped substantially, and unit consolidation is proceeding ahead of schedule." The statistical reality of combat was that small tactical advantages often produce disproportionate strategic results. Private First Class David Kim, dome medic attached to Lieutenant Chen's platoon, found himself dealing with a dramatically different medical situation once the artillery threat was eliminated. Kim, whose parents had emigrated from Korea and established a small medical practice in Los Angeles, had received extensive training in battlefield medicine before joining the airborne forces. "The difference is incredible," Kim explained to Chen as they prepared to advance toward their objective. "Without that constant artillery harassment, I can actually provide proper medical attention to the wounded. We can establish proper casualty collection points and ensure adequate treatment." The human cost of warfare was always measured in individual stories, and Kim understood better than most how tactical decisions affected real people. His medical training emphasized the critical importance of rapid treatment and evacuation, but effective medical care was impossible under sustained artillery fire. As the morning progressed, Tommy Rodriguez continued his duties without understanding the broader significance of his early misfire. His gun crew maintained their defensive positions, successfully engaging several more German aircraft and contributing to the overall air superiority that the Allied forces were establishing over the battlefield. Sergeant Kowalski noticed the improved morale and confidence that Tommy displayed after his initial success. "You've got the makings of a real gunner, Rodriguez," he observed during a brief pause in the action. "Steady hands and good instincts, that's what wins these engagements." The psychological transformation was as important as the tactical one. Tommy's confidence in his abilities and his trust in his equipment and training had been validated through successful combat performance. This confidence would prove crucial for the continuing operations that lay ahead. Hauptmann Klaus Richter, meanwhile, was attempting to reorganize his remaining artillery assets after the devastating air attack that had neutralized his primary battery. Richter possessed extensive combat experience from the Eastern Front, where he had learned to adapt quickly to changing tactical situations and make maximum use of limited resources. "We must establish alternative firing positions immediately," Richter ordered his surviving battery personnel. "The Americans have demonstrated their ability to locate and neutralize our concealed positions. We must assume they have similar capabilities against any new positions we establish." The German tactical doctrine emphasized defensive flexibility and the ability to continue operations despite significant losses. Richter's experience had taught him that successful defense required constant adaptation and the willingness to sacrifice prepared positions when necessary. But the strategic situation had already shifted decisively in favor of the Allied forces. The elimination of the concealed artillery battery had created a gap in German defensive coverage that enabled rapid consolidation of scattered airborne units. This consolidation, in turn, created the foundation for sustained offensive operations that would threaten the entire German defensive line in that sector. Major General Matthew Ridgway, commanding the 82nd Airborne Division, received hourly reports that detailed the improving tactical situation across his area of operations. Ridgway, a veteran paratrooper with extensive experience in Sicily and Italy, understood how small tactical victories could create opportunities for major strategic advances. "The elimination of that artillery battery has accelerated our consolidation timeline by at least 6 hours, Ridgway informed his staff during the afternoon briefing. "We can now advance our primary objectives and begin link-up operations with seaborne forces ahead of schedule." The cascading effects of Tommy's misfire continued to influence operations throughout the day. Company after company of American paratroopers found themselves able to advance more rapidly, establish stronger defensive positions, and coordinate more effectively without the constant threat of accurate artillery fire. Technical Sergeant James Murphy, a communications specialist responsible for coordinating between scattered airborne units, reported dramatic improvements in radio communications as units were able to establish proper antenna systems without immediate threat of artillery strikes. Murphy, a former radio technician from rural Montana, understood how effective communications formed the foundation of successful military operations. "Signal strength and message traffic have improved substantially," Murphy reported through the command network. "Units are reporting successful link-up operations and coordinated advances toward primary objectives. The overall tactical picture is developing very favorably." Private Tommy Rodriguez finished his first day of combat with a sense of accomplishment tempered by exhaustion. His gun crew had successfully engaged 7 German aircraft, contributing to the air superiority that protected the vulnerable transport operations. Tommy could not have imagined that his nervous first shot, the one that had missed its intended target by hundreds of meters, had actually achieved more strategic impact than all his subsequent accurate shooting combined. Sergeant Kowalski conducted the evening equipment inspection with his characteristic thoroughness, noting the expenditure of ammunition and the condition of the weapon systems. "Outstanding performance today, men," he told his gun crew. "We maintained effective defensive fire throughout sustained enemy air attacks. The battery commander has commended our unit for exceptional performance under combat conditions." The statistical summary of the day's operations would record that Battery C of the 321st Anti-Aircraft Battalion had fired 896 rounds of 40mm ammunition, achieving confirmed hits on 11 enemy aircraft while suffering no personnel casualties. The administrative record would note these facts without any reference to the single errant shot that had changed the tactical situation for thousands of men. Corporal Sullivan spent the evening performing maintenance on the gun mechanisms, understanding that mechanical reliability was essential for continued combat effectiveness. His technical expertise ensured that the complex firing systems would be ready for whatever challenges the following day might bring. As darkness fell over the Norman countryside, Lieutenant Chen's platoon had successfully secured their assigned objective and established defensive positions that would anchor the regiment's advance toward the coastal fortifications. The crossroads they controlled was already being used by supply vehicles and reinforcement units moving toward forward positions. It's remarkable how quickly the situation changed. Chen reflected to Sergeant O'Brien as they established their night defensive positions. "This morning, we were pinned down and unable to move. Tonight, we're ahead of schedule and preparing for offensive operations." O'Brien, with his extensive combat experience, understood the unpredictable nature of warfare better than most. "Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, Lieutenant. But you still have to be ready to take advantage of whatever luck comes your way." The medical situation had improved dramatically as well. Private First Class Kim had been able to establish a proper aid station and provide comprehensive medical care to the wounded personnel from multiple units. The absence of artillery harassment allowed for proper medical evacuation procedures and significantly improved treatment outcomes. "The difference in medical capabilities is extraordinary," Kim reported to the regimental medical officer. "We can now provide stabilization treatment and arrange proper evacuation instead of simply applying emergency first aid under fire." Major William Patterson landed his P-47 Thunderbolt at a temporary airstrip established behind the front lines, completing a day of close air support operations that had included the crucial attack on the German artillery battery. Patterson's post-flight report would note the destruction of the concealed position, but like all the other official records, it contained no reference to the circumstances that had led to its discovery. "Successful interdiction of enemy artillery position," Patterson wrote in his mission report. "Target was clearly visible and presented excellent opportunity for precision attack. Enemy defensive capabilities in that sector have been significantly degraded." The intelligence analysis prepared by division staff officers documented the broader tactical implications of the artillery battery's elimination. The reports noted improved unit consolidation rates, reduced casualty figures, and accelerated progress toward assigned objectives. The analytical framework focused on measurable military outcomes rather than the specific circumstances that had created the opportunity. Oberst Heinrich Müller received reports throughout the evening that documented the deteriorating defensive situation in his sector. The loss of the concealed artillery battery had created a significant gap in his defensive coverage, and American airborne units were exploiting that gap with characteristic aggressiveness. "The Americans have demonstrated remarkable ability to locate and neutralize our prepared positions," Müller reported to his superior officers. "We must assume that our defensive planning has been compromised and prepare alternative strategies accordingly." The German defensive doctrine emphasized the importance of prepared positions and coordinated artillery support. The elimination of a major artillery battery forced significant tactical adjustments and created vulnerabilities throughout the defensive line. As Tommy Rodriguez settled into his sleeping bag for his first night in combat, he reflected on the events of the day. He felt proud of his performance during the air battles, satisfied with his growing competence as a gunner, and grateful for the steady leadership provided by Sergeant Kowalski and Corporal Sullivan. What Tommy could not know was that his single moment of nervous inaccuracy had already influenced the lives of thousands of men and would continue to affect the tactical situation for days to come. The German artillery battery that his misfire had revealed would have continued to inflict casualties on American paratroopers for hours or possibly days if it had remained concealed. The butterfly effect of warfare meant that small actions often produced enormous consequences, but those consequences were rarely visible to the individuals who initiated them. Tommy's story was being repeated countless times across the vast battlefield as individual decisions and actions combined to determine the outcome of one of history's most significant military operations. Captain Morrison reviewed the day's action reports before submitting his summary to battalion headquarters. His assessment focused on the technical performance of his battery's equipment and personnel, noting the successful engagement of enemy aircraft and the maintenance of defensive positions throughout sustained combat operations. Battery C performed exceptionally well during its first day of combat operations, Morrison wrote in his official report. All gun crews demonstrated proficiency with equipment and procedures. Personnel casualties were minimal, despite intensive enemy air attacks. Equipment functionality was maintained throughout sustained firing operations. The formal military reporting system captured the quantifiable aspects of combat performance, while often missing the human stories and accidental circumstances that shaped actual events. Morrison's report would become part of the historical record, documenting the battery's contribution to the larger battle, without reference to the specific incident that had produced its most significant impact. Master Sergeant Washington completed his evening supply summary, documenting the successful resupply of scattered airborne units and the establishment of supply lines that would support continuing offensive operations. His logistical expertise had enabled the rapid consolidation of combat units by ensuring adequate ammunition, medical supplies, and communication equipment. Supply operations proceeded more smoothly than anticipated, Washington reported to the regimental logistics officer. Reduced enemy interference allowed for establishment of regular supply schedules and improved inventory management. Current supply levels are adequate for sustained operations. The unglamorous but essential work of military logistics formed the foundation that enabled dramatic tactical operations. Washington's methodical approach to supply management had contributed as much to the day's success as any individual act of heroism or tactical brilliance. Technical Sergeant Murphy established communication schedules for the following day, coordinating radio frequencies and call signs for the continuing operations. His technical expertise ensured that scattered units could maintain contact with higher headquarters and coordinate their activities effectively. Communication systems are functioning well, Murphy reported through the command network. Signal quality has improved significantly due to reduced enemy interference. All units are maintaining regular contact and reporting improved coordination. The technical complexity of modern warfare required specialists like Murphy who understood both the equipment and the procedures necessary for effective military communications. His contribution to the day's success was measured in terms of messages transmitted, frequencies coordinated, and units linked together into an effective fighting force. As the first day of the Normandy invasion drew to a close, the broader strategic picture was becoming clear to senior commanders on both sides. The Allied forces had established viable foothold on the European continent, despite fierce German resistance and challenging operational conditions. The elimination of the concealed German artillery battery had played a small but significant role in that larger success, contributing to the rapid consolidation of airborne forces and the establishment of defensive positions that would anchor the expanding beachhead. Tommy Rodriguez's nervous misfire had become part of a vast chain of events that would ultimately determine the outcome of the war in Europe. The statistical summary of the day's operations would record thousands of individual actions, unit movements, casualty figures, and logistical achievements. Buried within those statistics was the record of one 18-year-old gunner who had missed his target on his first shot in combat. The official record would never note that this single mistake had saved hundreds of lives and contributed significantly to one of the most important military victories in history. Colonel Mitchell submitted his evening report to division headquarters, summarizing his regiment's successful consolidation and advance toward assigned objectives. His assessment focused on the tactical situation and the prospects for continuing offensive operations. The 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment has successfully consolidated scattered elements and secured primary objectives ahead of schedule, Mitchell reported. Casualties were lighter than anticipated, and unit morale remains high. The regiment is prepared for continuing offensive operations in support of division objectives. The chain of command that connected individual soldiers like Tommy Rodriguez to strategic commanders like General Eisenhower operated through layers of reporting and analysis that often obscured the specific circumstances behind major tactical developments. Mitchell's report would contribute to higher-level assessments without revealing the accidental discovery that had enabled his regiment's rapid progress. Private First Class Kim completed his medical log for the day, documenting the treatment provided to wounded personnel and the establishment of medical evacuation procedures. His medical training and dedication had contributed to significantly improved survival rates among wounded personnel. Medical operations were facilitated by reduced enemy artillery activity, Kim wrote in his medical report. Casualty rates were lower than anticipated, and treatment outcomes were improved by the ability to establish proper medical facilities. Current medical supply levels are adequate for continuing operations. The human cost of warfare was always Kim's primary concern, and he understood better than most how tactical decisions affected individual soldiers. His medical expertise had enabled him to save lives and reduce suffering, contributing to the broader military mission while maintaining his commitment to the medical profession's fundamental principles. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.